Hi, this is Jim Cranston from 7 Every Minute and 7everyminute.com, the podcast and website about reimagining your life. Thanks for joining me today to talk about ageism versus a meaningful life. So let's get started. If you like what you hear today, please leave a like, subscribe, tell your friends, send me a message. Tonight we're going to be talking about ageism, and we've done this before, but um, tonight we're going to be looking at it from the standpoint of how having ageist thoughts or subscribing to ageist thinking undermines a person's ability to really have a meaningful life. I was reading another article on ageism, and this was about one of President Biden's, and actually it had to do with President Biden's prostate cancer. And in it was mentioned the sudden rise in serious cases of prostate cancer because a number of years back, the government recommended that men older than 75 initially and then later 70 shouldn't be screened for prostate cancer. And it even went so far as to recommend that men 55 to 69, they should merely have a discussion on the risks, the benefits of screening prostate cancer. And so that resulted, by the way, in a huge spike in the cases of serious prostate cancer. I thank you for that. But interesting, this is where the ageism comes in. It turns out the architect of the Affordable Care Act, Dr. Emanuel, he's currently 67, but a number of years ago when he wrote the Affordable Care Act, he also wrote an article for The Atlantic entitled, Why I Hope to Die at 75. So, it was all about how living to a ripe old age, 75 or even younger, as he says in the article, this is a quote, renders many of us, if not disabled, then faltering and declining, end quote. And another quote, even if we're not demented, our mental functioning deteriorates as we grow older, end quote. The only thing you can say is just wow, right? Again, he was the architect of the Affordable Care Act, someone with total and hugely negative age bias, which helps explain why it's still so incredibly difficult to get a reasonable insurance policy, but that's a different and very large story. But think about his statements for a minute. There were more, actually, and even more negative, but there's an interesting underlying thought process going on here. Oh, and a quick aside, I should note that Denmark just raised the retirement age to 70 years old, effective in a few years, and is currently 67 years old. And that's because their equivalent to Social Security is based upon the average lifespan longevity of its population. So as lifespan increases, so does the retirement age. So now think again about Dr. Emanuel's statement that life is effectively over at or even before 75 years old. And Denmark thinks, hey, you're still a productive person in society till you're 70 years old. The undertone in that statement from Dr. Emanuel is that your life has no meaning once you retire, right? Nice way to look at life. Talk about a non-motivating way to live your life. I'll simply say that everything about those statements, his statements, and that attitude is categorically and completely off base and simply wrong. When you're older, you can often work far more efficiently because of your experience. When you're older, you have a far better developed sense of perspective and are less likely to follow false shiny objects or trends. And when you're older, you're more likely to be compassionate if you're willing to look back into your own life and remember you made the same mistakes when you were younger. Finally, when you're older, you're in a unique position to mentor following generations to take a longer view, to prepare for the future and be vigilant about today because you've seen the fads come and go and you realize that the core principles, those are what will carry you through difficult times. So here's a completely different way to look at aging than the supposed medical expert proclaimed. Aging is a time of mental and spiritual growth. Spiritual not just in a religious sense, but in the sense of a philosophical and awareness growth. It's also a time to acknowledge that, indeed, the body does keep the score, and that all those health shortcuts you took, well, they're starting to come home to roost, and now is the right time to start living a better physical lives so that we can best enjoy this time of our lives. It's also a time of great appreciation, not only of what we've enjoyed thus far, but how we can help mold the world that we live in. There are many reasons for ageism, and I would suggest that one of them is that those in power don't especially want to hear from us because we're old enough to recognize the lies that they're saying and know the reality is far different than the soundbite on social media. We're old enough to realize that everybody's view really is important. And as conceptually fun as it may seem, living in an echo chamber is really not good for any of us, and certainly not good for the country as a whole. We're old enough to remember when you could have a discussion about something and it didn't have to end with two sides hating each other and refusing to talk anymore. The modern political climate of near political total polarization, that's not the way it's always been, and it's not a healthy way to run a country or the world. And we're old enough to remember when buying a single bag of groceries didn't cost over $100, and that you didn't get annoyed at the tractor full of corn or grain going down the road in front of you because that was the food you were going to eat in a couple of days. And you knew the farmer personally. Yes, until fairly recently, New York, where I tell you that I live, was one of the leading farming states. So take that, Washington, Idaho, and Iowa, because we were in the same league of those in all those three grains and fruits. And our food was local. It didn't have to be flown in from around the globe. And these are very important things to not only to remember, but to pass along to younger generations. Many people think that the way we live today is the only way to live because they've never seen anything else. And why would they think something's different if you've never seen something different? Obviously, we've always lived this way. The older people in their lives are portrayed as these brainless idiots who can't even use anything beyond a dial telephone. So why should they listen to us? They will listen to you, however, and learn from you when you share all the knowledge you have accumulated freely and without judgment. You think their music is boring or stupid? How about teaching them some music theory and how much they can do with it and make the music sound really differently? But there's a very big but and a very big and listen to their music and understand what they find interesting and see how the two views complement each other. Everything in your discussion should be a two-way street. When you start looking for opportunities to engage, you'll find many things in common, but you'll also be providing a context for them for the future. When you start engaging across generations and points of view, you'll also suddenly find much more meaning in your life. And that's the biggest thing that ageism and ageist thinking suppresses. When you automatically discount anyone past an arbitrary age, you not only you, but the other person and society, they're all getting hurt by that thought. You've just taken somebody who has a different perspective and a different view of the world and completely discounted that for no valid reason. And you're setting yourself up to feel kind of like an automatic failure because in later years, the sole reason, you're looking at these people for not being good is because they're not young. And someday you won't be young, and so automatically that you will someday be somebody to be despised by others. And that's a real shame. In reality, with a simple mind shift, we could easily take control back of our society, our country, and the world by engaging across generations and building upon the huge foundation of knowledge that's often locked up because our older citizens, we just discount them and there's no good reason why we shouldn't access all that good knowledge. It's interesting to see how society is working in Ukraine. Every generation is working towards a common goal, and every generation is trying to learn from the others. They have no time for silly ageist thoughts. Instead, they're constantly working together for a common goal. So look what you have to offer the world. And don't try and force an opinion on somebody. Just offer your experience when it makes sense. Don't go into the good old days mode. Maybe offer some practical tips on something, maybe like saving money to a struggling young person. Suggest that perhaps the most overpriced grocery store item is pudding mix, for example, or gravy mix, and how simple it is to make from scratch. And it's way cheaper and it tastes better. There are a million other simple openings in every area of life, whether it's cutting a board, walking down the street, picking a route to something. There's a thousand things that have just been forgotten. And part of that reason is because of the ageist way of thinking that's being pushed onto everybody. These suggestions and many other things, especially in politics, doing these little tiny knowledge sharing things, they not only add meaning to your life, but can also add, hopefully some perspective and respect between the generations and gives everybody a better future to look forward to. So that's it for the evening. Your homework tonight is to think about some things that bother you or upset you now in the world and what you might say to a younger person who doesn't understand why you don't think it's a good idea or why the situation is so bad. Extra points if you also research the popular opinion There's always some popular opinion probably that's annoying you. Research a little bit, not just to find problems with it, but also to see if there's any good parts about it that maybe you missed because you judged it kind of hastily as well. So that's it for tonight. Remember, we're going to be hosting a free webinar called Smart Goals for Life. In this interactive session, we'll be expanding on everything we discussed in our series on SMART goals, provide some practical worksheets and exercises to help you apply those concepts in your own goals, and actually working right now with one of the people that works with me to put together an AI assistant to do so you'll be able to put in a particular goal you're working on, give it some context, and it can provide some initial guidance back to you as to how to reconfigure that as a SMART goal. So we're pretty excited about that. This delayed things a little bit, but that's going along. So whether you're considering retirement, changing careers, whatever your life transition is, this webinar will give you some tools to work with and how to achieve your goals that truly matter to you. We'll work through some examples that you provide, and you leave a personalized action plan that you've created to meet your very own needs. If there's anything particularly that you want to have us cover, make sure you drop us a note, send me an email, whatever, and stay tuned for the specific date and to sign up. And please remember to register, even if you can't attend. There will be replays, recording of the session, and you'll also be entered for a raffle for our new products. All good stuff. So again, that's it for the evening. Please remember the many wars going on in the world, areas of political unrest. There's a lot of stuff. We all know it. So keep those in mind. UKR7.com is where we have links to help support the people of Ukraine. Something near and dear to my heart, should be near and dear to all of ours. And then World Central Kitchen, wherever there's a disaster, World Central Kitchen shows up and just helps get food and basic services going on to the people there. Both great organizations. One's focused on the Ukraine, the other on the world in general. And there's also, I'm sure, various organizations and things around wherever it is that you're living. They can always use help, donations, either in-person help. And if you're not just in a position or a mindset right now to donate somewhere, remember that just saying a simple hello or a smile to somebody can really change the day. One of the best ways to care for yourself is to care for others. So looking outside yourself gives you a different perspective on the world and can just really make everybody's day a whole lot better. So if you can and you're able, check out UKR7.com, WCK.org, some local organization. Just show a little friendship to the people around you. As always, thank you for stopping by. If you found something interesting or useful, please pass it along. Please subscribe, hit that like button. If not, please drop me a comment as to what you'd like to hear. Have a great week. Remember to live the life that you dreamed of, because that's the path to true contentment. Love and encouragement to everyone. See you next week on 7 Every Minute and 7everyminute.com. Thank you.